This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Very busy week in the world of professional bass fishing. You've got a BPT coming up in a week or two, or in another invitational at the beginning of the month, and then the Elite Series kicks off tomorrow out at Hartwell, which that looks like it could be setting up. Man, I'm just a fan of catching fish, and I'm watching all these guys out at Hartwell, and they're like, oh, here's a 15-pound striper, here's an 8-pound hybrid, here's a 4-pound spotted bass. Like, I'm all about, like, if I'm going to practice for an event, like, yeah, it's nice to get on it, but dude, like, if you could just like turn around and catch a 10-pound striper at any cast, like, I like those events. Like, I like going to Cherokee and trying to catch the smallmouth and then just like, oh, look, schooling high for 30 seconds. I like those type of practices, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes down, whether that'll be a bank-related deal, post-spawn deal, or a mix of both. But news that came down over this past week, which I got to admit, it wasn't a shock to me, but it was a surprise. And Kevin was the first of what I would call a generation of professional anglers. I put Kevin and I mean, I guess you could kind of put maybe Timmy Horton in that category, who retired before too. But that Kevin, Edwin, Skeet, that group of guys, Swindles in that, a Hackney, that group of guys who kind of came up, who defined a generation of tournament bass fishing, took it to the next level, were really around at the inception of the Bassmaster Elite Series under the ESPN directorship there, where the personalities were expanded upon, the storylines were really developed. We've talked a lot about how professional bass fishing has been covered in recent years, and what it is looking like, how the different organizations are jockeying to cover that, to build value in their anglers. And so Skeet, who we had on the show last year, who was just inducted into the 2024 class of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, and has won recently on the East Coast, came out and announced his retirement from competitive fishing, similar to like a Kevin announcement, where he's like, hey, like, I'm still in the industry. It's not like I'm going to go golf every single day and not be around. But kind of came as a surprise, as to me, at least, as far as the timing. And Skeet's an interesting angler to look at, because he is one of the few anglers who has been able to develop a cult following of fans who have followed him wherever he goes, bought whatever he's come out with. One of the few guys who I know multiple people who are in the boat that he runs, because that's a Skeet boat, who throw the crankbaits that he throws because that's what he throws. He's been able to capture what a lot of professional anglers look for, which is a market share and true fans. Because let's face it, when a guy wins a tournament 2,000 miles away, it doesn't really affect your life, whether the guy finishes last or the guy finishes first. You say the same thing with a lot of individual sports. Like, I look at like Oklahoma Sooners, like the football team, like I get to go to those games. So how they do affects like my life in a way, because then, you get to go to more games, you get to home games, you get the experience. But an individual sport, it's kind of odd to me. Like, you're rooting hardcore for specific anglers, but there's a group of those specific anglers who guys follow them throughout, thick and thin, regardless of what league they are, regardless of what they do. Skeet is one of those guys. And he's joining us on BTL early. It's a little special edition. Like, that's a vintage Skeet. I said, hey, can you jump on 8:30 a.m. Central Time? And you're like, yeah, let's make it an hour later. But hopefully you got a little bit more sleep, Skeet, and thanks for jumping on BTL.
Matt, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be on. I think I still got a frog in my throat. I've been allergies, whatever, but I got my coffee, so we're good. That's,
yeah.
I'm looking
is that a fair assessment, Skeet? Like, there's like a a generation of anglers that you're in, like kind of a core group that I feel like kind of redefined tournament fishing from the early 2000s through that 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14 era. And then you had like kind of the next group, which I would put like a Wheeler, a Polinick, a Lucas in there. But like kind of when the social media, when the TV, when ESPN, when everything was pumped in, like you guys were and still are that kind of core group that carried the sport as a whole.
I agree 100%. I mean, I feel fortunate. Yeah, I'm part of that group. So I look at there's me, there's KBD, there's Ike.
Yeah, Ike.
And then I would probably put Hackney in that group.
Yep. Aaron was definitely in that group.
Yeah. But as far as just we came through at the right time. Our careers were peaking at the right time. When you're winning, everything else kind of comes easier. But then with ESPN coming on board and putting the media, driven behind us, that helped build the brand and exposed us to our brands to a lot of new customers out there, a lot of new fans and people in the sport. So. Yeah, it's crazy. Like that is a generational thing that I don't know if we see that again. I don't know. But I'm just glad I got to be part of that. And having the fan base that I've had all these years is super cool. Obviously yesterday was a big deal, big announcement. My phone was blowing up. Social media messages, I think it was a roller coaster of emotions yesterday, reading everything, and just some of the responses were just freaking so cool. So knowing I never set out to impact the sport like how I have. It just one of those things that evolved, and I just wanted to catch fish, and then this is now everything that's come with it over the years, just through just a lot of hard work and determination.
When did you first realize, like, okay, I'm the West Coast dude, I'm doing the thing, the spiky hair, like you're doing your thing, you've made it, and then when was the first time you realized, like, dude, there's like a guy in Kansas that's like all about Skeet Reese fishing when you started to travel around? Was that a surprise to you? Did you feel that kind of groundswell of support as you started to travel more and more around the country, where you're like, holy cow, there's like guys on opposite coasts, there's guys like all over who are Skeet Reese fans?
I think it took a little while. I mean, a few years. Obviously, I think 2003 was my first. 2000 was my first tour event win, or my first tour win, or 2003, somewhere in there. I'm not good on dates and times, but I think when it was after I had won a couple times, outside of the West Coast, and the amount of TV exposure I started to get, and I think people. I always look at it's kind of like Jeff Gordon when he hit NASCAR. It was a love-hate relationship with the NASCAR fans for so long. And, here's this California kid that's come out and also just starts dominating. And he wasn't a traditional Southern, spoken race car driver. And I think that was the thing for me, is I wasn't traditional in the sport of bass fishing, how I looked and how I acted. And so I think that I brought some West Coast flair or something like that to it. And I think people was like, hey, this is different. This is fun. And it took a little while, but then I think, like you said, the swell started growing, and, as you continue to win, then that swell grows faster.
Did you ever like butt heads with Tripp or with the powers to be at the organizations just about your persona and how you were and stuff? I mean, it's a very traditional bass fishing scene, similar to, like you said, like in NASCAR, that like, did you have to go into meetings where it was like, hey, like tone it down? Or do you think that that sponsors and the organizations gravitated to you more, especially in the early days, because they saw the potential for the expansion and the additional eyeballs that you could bring to that organization?
Yeah, I think the latter part of your question is correct. The sponsors, I think, gravitated towards me just because the look, the attitude, whatever it was, the fishing. So I had some great partners early on, and I think the I think, Bass and especially ESPN, they saw it and they, excuse me. I don't think I ever bumped heads with Tripp. I mean, well, I shouldn't say I didn't bump. You bump heads with every tournament director. So, because we're always doing something, we're pushing something, or believing something that's different than a tournament director. But, Tripp was just one of those guys. Tripp was, he's black and white, and I love Tripp to death. But no, I think I got in trouble more for probably dropping F-bombs on live than anything.
Yeah, that's just like later on once it gets to the live coverage. I remember that was like a debacle. They're trying to figure out where to cover it, how to cover it, what the guys could say. Remember when they first started doing the live, like everyone's like, oh, it'd be cool if we could go to like live cameras in each boat, blah, blah, blah. Well, they had that for a while, but the problem was you'd then be like covering guys, and you could like go to all these different boats and you'd have a guy that's just dropping 7 F-bombs with a fish stuck in a brush pile. Yep. You go to another guy that's chain smoking on the front deck. You'd go to another guy that's taking a leak off the front deck. And it was almost like they were like, all right, we got to figure this out because this is not working out very well. Let's rein it back into 10 and then say, hey, you're on live.
Yeah. Because I did all the above. So.
Yeah. Hey, you think, like you mentioned those characters, I mean, icons, all Hall of Famers, that Ike, Kevin, Swindle, do you think that was the perfect storm to push each other, to highlight each other's personality, to highlight the rivalries, to have it? I mean, to me, like that had to have been the perfect storm of that group of guys with the ESPN, with the expansion of the coverage and the TV shows. I mean, I feel like if it was just one or two guys, it was like that whole group. Maybe, am I just being nostalgia on that, or is that
probably a little bit? But
I don't think so. I think if you ask anybody who's listening here, who's been following the sport for a long time, like, dude, that was like, and of course over on FLW, then at the time you had Scott Martin, you had David Dudley, you had Brian Thrift, and you had Andy Morgan. Like, to me, that was the group over there. But the Bass side had, I mean, it was just like to the moon then.
I do. I believe that it was the perfect timing for us in our careers. We came through at the right time to where we were peaking performance-wise, in tournaments. We're winning. So that's the number one thing, is you have to be able to win. And that drives it all. But just with ESPN behind it at the time, and just the extra push that allowed us to have, from a media standpoint, marketing standpoint, created more value in all of us. And I don't know. We've talked about this before. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. I mean, it's possible. I mean, there's still something can happen. We can get it, turn in the tide to where we grow a whole new audience somehow. That, I'm not going to say we'll never see that again, because it's quite possible it'll happen again. Who will be those characters in place at that time? I don't know.
Why now, Skeet? A third of the way through the 2025 season, less than a year after your induction to the Hall of Fame, fresh off a victory. You fished in Redcrest, a lot going on in the industry on and off the water. Why the announcement now?
Well, the full answer to that, this is a conversation that I've had in my head, my wife and I have had for years. When is it going to be time? I think there's a certain part of the process of tournament fishing that has not been as enjoyable for me as it used to be. I still love the catching, but just the process you got to go through to fish tournaments. So what really triggered it is that I was up at Clear Lake, a week or so ago, and for a few days, and tending with my mom's stuff as she passed away, and then I fished a day, and I was on Kim's shit list for whatever I was doing, and she sent me a text and this is full transparency here, that she sent me a text and said that I was too scared to take a leap of faith into our future without competitive fishing. And I was like, son of a bitch. That's 100% true. I'm like, I've been scared to death to leave the competitive world, because I'm scared of it's been my identity for so long. So any professional athlete, the thought of leaving a sport that has identified you and it made you who you are, it's created the limelight, the fanfare, the endorsement world. So it's like, how do you walk away from that? And so I thought about that. Golly, sorry. And I was like, son of a bitch, why? Why am I still holding on? And when I thought about it, it's like, if this is it, if I quit, and all of a sudden I felt this complete calmness come over me when I said, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna ask my retirement. And when I did that, yeah, I felt 100% at peace. Like it was an amazing feeling. I drove home the next day and I told her, and she was shocked. And it's like it just felt right. And I was like, okay, well, this is, fear is what stops us from doing most things in life. Most people don't do anything because they're scared to do something. And I don't want to keep hanging on for the wrong reasons to the tournament scene. So that's what I like. This is scary, but we're in great shape, so we can do this. And let's jump into the next chapter of life here and go down this next path, and whatever it might be, we're gonna deal with it and take it head on, and that'll be the new norm for us.
Does it feel like it's been 28 years?
No, that's the crazy shit right there. That is like, yeah, like reading all these text and messages from people that like, I've been watching you since I was 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old. And now I'm 40 years old and I got kids, or I'm 50 years old and grandchildren. And I'm like, then you start thinking like, damn, I'm like, yeah, I've been fishing 28 years. So, full time for a living. Obviously I've been fishing tournaments now for 41, going on 42 years. And, so it doesn't feel like it's been that long. But then again, it's like anybody that's, especially when you have kids, you realize that, you have them, and then all of a sudden, just blink of an eye, they're in their 20s, and you're like, shit, where did it all go? So,
I feel like throughout the course of your career, though, you've always done cool stuff with your kids, whether it's like World Cup, soccer, like you've always taken chunks of your time to say, hey, we're doing family stuff here. Since I've known you, you've been like, hey, not answering the phone for the next 2 weeks. Skeet's MIA.
That's true. Yeah, our kids are, I love spending time with my children. So it's my wife. So we travel. If we can go do something fun, then life's supposed to be fun. I want to go enjoy as much as we possibly can, as long as we can. So if it means going camping or traveling around the world or whatever, going to World Cup games or U.S. women's national team games, wherever they're at, because it's fun. So that's what we do.
Biggest difference in the sport from your first year fishing the invitationals in late 90s to 2025?
Biggest difference?
Yeah. On the water, off the water, as a whole. Like, just say the biggest difference in professional bass fishing as a professional angler who has been to and seen it all, from my first year on tour, making a living doing it, to my last year on tour, which is 2025, as you just announced yesterday. Biggest difference?
Oh, without a doubt. Obviously, the elephant in the room is we forward-facing sonar. We're learning so much more about fish than we ever. Look, I've done a shitload of articles and videos and talking about bass behavior, where, when, how, why, with what lure, and which still all holds true. But there's this whole other group of fish that we never knew how they lived for the entire existence of the sport. And now we're seeing that there's fish they roam in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and there's food around, or hell, they don't even have to be food. They could be just floating out in the middle of the lake getting warm. I don't know. It's just there's fish that have never been touched. So this is new territory.
Mm-hmm. You use the phrase elephant in the room. So I'll ask the question that a lot of people are wanting to know then. Are you retiring because of the forward-facing sonar in the era, and you don't want to go down that path for the next 10 years and wake up and you're 60 then?
I would like to say no, it's not. But there's probably there's some of it that yes, if I do not, there's a lot of, so I have the choice to learn it and use it, and I could be great at it if I choose to spend that much time doing it. I'm just not at a point in my time in my life and career that I want to go do that. So, and I know that if the technology's there, you're not going to be competitive unless you're good at it. So it's the change of the guard in the way the sport is right now. So there is some part of that, but it was also, I think if anybody's ever had a job for, which most of your generation has not had a job for 28 years. And you ask anybody that's worked any job anywhere for 20
I worked for Jeffries for 13 years. I feel like I've had a job.
Yeah, that's like 30.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I talked to Mark this morning. He's deep in he is, I mean, you want to talk about a wormhole. He is as deep down the wormhole recruiting trail for collegiate bowling as you can. He was on the phone with someone, a female bowler from Hawaii, believe it or not. And I said, do you want to jump on, congratulate Skeet on a career well fish? And he said, I can't. I have 2 conference calls with different people that are scheduled at the same time, but make sure that you tell him that I said congratulations and I'll give him a call.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
So anyway,
thanks, Mark.
Yeah, pretty short on that.
So back to, it's not why I'm getting out right now. It's just it's the time. It's 28 years of a lot of time, a lot of commitment, and that's why I think there's a time where I felt like I had to keep pushing myself to be better and to do more. And I think I'm at a point in time in my life where I realize that it doesn't matter what I go win at this point in time in my career. It's not going to change who I am as a person. It's not going to change my brand. It's not going to change my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go do something that has more meaning to me at this point in time and gives me new challenges to keep me motivated. That I love. Yeah, Reese fishing is like my new challenge. It's my wife is my new challenge. there's a lot, so she's going to be dealing with me more. So maybe this should be it's a new challenge for her. So there's a lot of different reasons for it, but I'll go back to it. It is not the driving force for getting me out of this by any means.
I'm as I've been in this industry longer and longer and watching a number of anglers put down the fishing rod competitively, I'm starting to realize that I think, and whether you want to call it a sport, a competitive activity, whatever it is, that professional bass fishing is one of the hardest professions to put down because there is not a hard stop point to it. There is not, a GM that is saying, hey, you can no longer throw the ball up to our capabilities, and the 22-year-old that we drafted and just gave a big contract to there's not the, physical where you're just like, hey, I can't. And that's the beautiful thing about the sport too. I say that to say one of the guys who I know is near and dear to your heart is Rick Clunn, and he just had 50 years of competitive fishing, still fishing the opens. One of the coolest things was I talked to him at Kentucky Lake in the open, and I was walking past and he said, hey, and he actually talked to me and was like, how'd it go out there for you today? And then I told him the stupid story about how I caught a rock, and I was like, damn, I wish I hadn't said that story. That was a dumb story. I wish I hadn't told Rick that story. I should have just said it was a tough day on me and then ask him about his. But I did this whole elaborate story about how I caught a rock and fought it in, and then it turned out to be a rock, and he just looked at me and he's like, oh, good story. And I was like, damn, bad story to tell. But I know how important Rick is to you. We all have seen, especially when Rick had his moment of winning that elite series and then him stepping away after 50 years. And you don't have to go into this if you don't want to, Skeet. Did you have any conversations with Rick? Did you reach out with that? The fact that kind of Rick ended after 50 years, how much of that did play into that? And was there any kind of wisdom or advice that he imparted before you announced your decision?
Yeah, I have not talked to Rick about it yet. Yeah, Rick is. I love Rick. So yeah, I'm just laughing at you. Yeah, you tell me. you tell him about a story about catching a rock. But
I was like, why did I tell Rick Clun that story?
Because Rick Clun asked you a question.
Yeah,
you're like, oh shit! Like Rick's talking to me. Okay, what happened today? You didn't catch a bass, but I caught a rock.
Yeah, no, and his story was so much cooler because he was talking about how he had a 5-pounder eat a spinnerbait 3 feet from the boat, and like how he was like it exploded, and he's like fighting it on the short string, and like I was like, oh, that's such a much better story than my rock story.
But as far as I think that's one of those things that I love. I'm so happy for Rick that Rick is still chasing what he loves doing. He loves tournament fishing, but I also know is like as much as I love Rick and what he's done, I know I've always known that's not going to be me.
Mm-hmm. I think you've always said that too, like out loud said that.
I did.
I think in the past you've said like I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 75.
No, there's I am because I've realized that whenever I go, I've got a little place of a clear lake, and when I'm up there just like fun fishing, it's fun. And I'm like, wow, I don't get to do a whole lot of fun fishing anymore. I mean, for 28 years, it's pretty much tournament fishing with very little fun fishing, relaxed. Well, I shouldn't say tournament fishing's fun when you're catching them, but when you're not catching them, it's not fun. But with no pressure. So I'm really enjoying the thought of just being able, I'm going to be able to go fish for whatever. I want to go fish for a week and just shoot some content and jack on some fish. Then that's going to be fun. But I was thinking about that yesterday, and somebody asked me a question. And I'm like, okay, 28 years. But then I felt like childish for retiring after 28 years because of Rick. And I'm like, shit. Okay, 50 years and he's still fishing tournaments. I'm like, all right, I'm a pansy then. I guess I don't know. So
that's nuts. But I mean, I think every sport has that. Like you had the Cal Ripken and guys who just, I mean, I wonder, like I would like to ask Rick, like, was there ever like a period that you had to like power through? Was there like a 4 or 5 year period, 20 years in, 30 years in, 40 years in, where you were like, this might be the last one. And then all of a sudden something happened that gave you another decade? Or do you wish like maybe after 30 you had just been like, you know what, I'm going to go pursue? But I don't know. Everyone has a different life path.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's lots of factors for, everybody. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of guys that are still fishing because they have to financially. Just because they're, it's still a job to them. They need the endorsement world. They need whatever checks are coming in, and they're trying to make ends meet at home. So, and this is the job they chose, and they got to continue to do it as long as they can. I know for myself, and like Kevin and Ike, we've been very fortunate that we've in the licensing and marketing and endorsement world that we've been successful, and I'm grateful that I'm in an opportunity that I can walk away and I'm okay. So. But that came, that was 28 years of, busting our ass to get us to that point. So, but I'm just glad I was in that opportunity or in that position and still in that position to be able to, I can choose whatever path I want now.
I said 30 to 40 minutes. Just let me know whenever you have to go. I'm going to skip the commercial break and just keep going as long as you want. But
all my coffee, there's coffee in here and I'm good.
Yeah. You don't even want to know what I've got in the BTL cup. It's been a long weekend, Skeet. I rolled back in from
probably a cameo tea or something.
I want to go back to just some things that stick out in my head and get your thoughts on them now that you're in the Hall of Fame, now that you've announced your retirement. And the first thing that sticks out to me is the period of time. And I think it starts with your second place finish. And I know you had others, but I think it starts with that second place finish in the Classic in 2007 in Birmingham there. And I think it rolls all the way through that to about 2010 season. So that 3-year period, which if you look back on it now, I mean, we have a body of work for you now, Skeet. Like, that was your MJ prime. That was, you look at that period of time there with the Angler of the Years and the Classic wins and all of the wins and the near misses. Think back to that 2.5-year period where, I mean, like, I'll just for those who didn't witness that, like, there were stretches in there where finishes of first, and this is all elite series. This isn't like weekend series stuff. This is the top with the top. First, 22nd, 6th, 24th, 9th, 2nd, 4th, 29th, 14th, 2nd, 6th, 43rd, 2nd, 5th, 1st, 5th, 1st. Like, that's every time you launch your boat in tournament competition, Skeet. Like, how freaking dialed in were you for that 3-year period? That was off the freaking chain.
Yeah, I was pretty well dialed in right then.
Like, how did that start? Have you thought back on that? I mean,
it was just, I wish I had a, exact answer to that, but it was just a progression of skill and time in the water and confidence, going from, getting a first tour win and then some other strong finishes. And he's like, all right, I'm starting to feel this and getting into my comfort zone out there. And then I think, obviously winning Angler of the Year in 2007 was like, frick, I did it. Oh shit, I did it. Like, I'm capable. I am good enough to compete out here. And then to finish, second at the Classic, that was gut wrenching, but also fuel as well. And then to be able to go into, obviously, win the Classic in 2009, and then, all the other tournament finishes. And, look, I won AOY that one, but I've won the regular points title 2 more years on the regular tour of the Elite Series. And obviously they went the postseason. So Kevin got those 2 titles. So it's interesting because tournament fishing is all mental. It is. It's all, tournament fishing is all about decision making and how you make those decisions on the water. Skill wise, there's a lot of guys that are really good at whatever, skippers, crankers, scopers now, whatever it is. There's great guys that are great at stuff, but it's still how you take the information and process it and utilize that, what's going on at that moment on the water is what separates the greats from the not so greats. And it's just like any other sport, doesn't it? It's baseball, basketball, hockey. It's making a split second decision at that moment to do what you need to do to advance yourself further in the game that day. And I think that's where I always excelled, is that I wasn't scared to push myself out of my comfort zone. So wasn't scared to try something new, whether it's to try a different bait or change locations. And you're just always pushing yourself to get that next bite and do whatever you need to do and that's where I think that was my strength when it came to competitive fishing, is just that mental side of it. I could shut everything else out, focus on the process at hand, and run with it and just do the best I could that day.
I'm going to say you and Kevin are the only 2 that I think were physically intimidating presences. Like, okay, that's like mid-run right there. Like, for those who are watching, that is not a guy who shows up to a boat ramp and goes, I think I'm going to catch him. That is a guy who shows up to a boat ramp and says, I am not only going to kick your ass, I'm going to beat it thoroughly up one side and down the other, and I'm going to do it 4 days in a row. Like, I just put that up there like that like, you 2 are the only guys that I've seen, and I'm not trying to suck up to you because you're on the show now. I mean, it's true, it, where you show up.
Yeah, find a picture of Kevin, because Kevin was not intimidating back then. He looked like a twig with a wet sock on him.
I know, but then he would say something in an interview like, oh, I got a couple places saved. And then he'd like look at the guy who's in second, and the guy in second would be like, oh, crap, I'm fishing for second today. Like, that he would do that too. He always would say, he'd always have like a little something that would let either the guy know that he's chasing or the guy that's behind him that they're fishing for second that day.
Kevin 100% is the Dale Earnhardt of bass fishing. So he always, I mean, as much as I would bust his balls, but yeah, I've never met anybody that had as much confidence in what he was doing on the water than Kevin. So yeah, I didn't have that trait. On the water, I just make shit happen.
Yeah. Like I remember watching you in the classic that you won with that spinner bait. You were outside. You were right out. This is going to sound weird. You were right outside of Bobo's hole, right?
Why did you have to take? You took it there. I didn't. So
I remember.
Normally be me though.
But you had the gallery and you were talking. But like you knew you were going to catch the key fish when you needed to catch the key fish. Yeah, like you could sense that. Like you knew, everyone knew watching it. Like it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was during that stretch.
Yeah. It just, understanding, paying attention to the weather conditions. That was, that classic. I had a perfect strategy for that tournament and it worked. It doesn't always work that way. Knowing a cold front, high pressure was going to come in, the clear water in the back of Bobo Hole or whatever, I forget the name of that pond.
We'll stick with Bobo's Hole.
Yeah, Bobo Hole. Those fish were going to shut off because high pressure, cold front, miserable. The main river was dirty, so the fish closest in the dirty water were going to be better in those conditions, and that's exactly what happened, and that's why I won.
You mentioned it a couple times. I want to go into a couple baits that I think you really kind of brought to the forefront. The first was you went on a heater with that Rego bait. I know Velvic had the BV3D and stuff, but you had that SKT one, and that was a Smith Mountain win. Was a lot of that was on that Rego, but that was something that outside of some stuff maybe down at Amistad and early in the year, like there weren't a bunch of guys that were going around lobbing inline swim baits back then. I mean, it's not like you had 50 guys going down the bank that were throwing mega bass mag drafts. Like that wasn't a thing. That was like that was kind of the precursor to the mag draft stuff, was it not?
100%, yes. I think that was the launch, in my opinion. That was the launch of the East Coast Southern swim bait craze, because no national tournament had been won on a swim bait in that part of the country, as far as I know, up to that point.
Smith Mountain. I mean, we're talking Virginia.
Yeah. And so to be able to come in, and I think I won by 20 pounds. I should have won by over 30 on that one for sure. But that, like, people are like, "What? You threw a swim bait here, Smith Mountain?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." That was a fun one, though, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, here I got some photos from back in the day. There, I mean, there you are. I mean, dude, like, look at there it is, right there.
Yeah,
you see it. You're just going down the bank, just absolutely cracking them on that that swim bait. The other thing that comes to mind is the giant bass tricks on Gunnersville. Yeah. How'd you get? I mean, I know Bass Tricks is a West Coast original owner since, pass it on. New Bass Tricks making a big comeback, kicking ass. As a matter of fact, some really cool stuff from Bass Tricks right now. It seems like they're in really good hands. For a while there, it was like, ooh, is Bass Tricks gone? And now it seems like, I mean, it's like it was like this, like straight up, and then it was like, oh, they're getting kind of hard, and then they were just gone, and then everything on the market had the that plastisol in it, to where it was like, oh, we've got them and we're still good, but then you go to use them and it's like water in the boxes from the
this is the oils just
and then they redid it, and then it was like,
you can pour the oil out of there.
I still have 7-inch Bass Tricks from like when you won it that are like wrapped in paper towels and with toothpicks on either side of them, and the paper towels are all saturated. I still go, and I can go get them right now. I've still somehow managed to maintain them. But Bass Tricks, anyway, long story short, Bass Tricks is on the rise again. If you guys haven't checked them out, check them out. Great thing running it as well. But that was, I remember you created, I know Remitz had some to do with that. There were other guys that were throwing it on the swim bait head on the TVAs and stuff, but that belly weighted Bass Tricks, and then on Gunnersville, the way you were throwing it, that was a pretty revolutionary tournament as well and fun to watch. How'd you get on that bite like at Gunnersville when you realized they'd eat the 7-inch bass tricks?
Well, I'll go back to, Byron Velvick. He was the one that, because I was throwing swim baits and I was getting a bite or here or there. And then Byron's like, man, they're choking the 7-inch bass tricks. And he's like, here, take one. So I threw one. And then it's like, donk. I'm like, oh shit, this thing's real. And then unfortunately for him, I beat him with the bait that he turned.
He lost a bunch that week.
He did, yeah. Because he didn't have the right rod. He didn't have the right setup. So.
Oh no! You think he'd have been there if he had been dialed in? I mean, I personally watched him jump like 5 or 6 off over 5.
Yeah, I don't remember what the winning margin was and all that, but it was my time. I had because I was running a gun and I was, chasing the post spawners that, in different locations. And, he was sitting on the bridge up there. So he got to sit in one spot and let him come to him. But anyways, it's one of those things. And that's a difference, there's a big difference, from a 5-fish tournament to, the Bass Pro Tour fish, every scoreable fish, whether 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds or greater or whatever it is. So you can, it's a,
oh, you beat him by 4 pounds. Oh, that's bad.
What's that?
He'd have won if he hadn't given you that tip. He only beat him by 4. He had 88-1. You had 92-11. Boy,
he would have so
groomed in that, like you and Byron, and then you had Remitz there. It looked like he was terrified of a razor. 88-1 to 92-11. Yeah.
Yeah. But I won, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. No, I hear it. So the other thing that I think you're synonymous with is the big square bill.
Yeah.
Like not the 2.5, not the 3.5, but I remember Lucky Craft came out with that. I mean, it's the size of your fist.
That's and that SKT was Magnum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that before guys were throwing big square bills when you kind of came out with that? Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, because it's looking at from the swim bait aspect. Like, so we can throw a 7, 8, 9-inch, 12-inch swim baits and bass are just crushing swim baits. So I was like, why don't we have a hard bait that's bigger? Like, why don't I have a deep diving crankbait square bill? So many of the lakes, these fish are feeding on gizzard shad. So a 5 or 6-inch shad is nothing for a 4-pound bass or greater. So it's like, why are we too scared to throw big crankbaits? And so that's when I came up with the SKT Magnums. Obviously I had the SKT Mini. That's how it started. And it's like, Palaniuk won his Bass Nation tournament with the SKT Mini. And so the SKT series has been proven with successful baits for fish catching.
It's a big ass crankbait.
Yeah. So I'm like, why can't we throw a bigger crankbait? So I just took that model and we made it bigger. So, and there's, it's what's interesting is that's still a secret bait for a lot of guys on TVA stuff. There's so many guys that fish that it's, whether it's the shallow diver or the deep diver, because the deep diver runs 25 feet, but it's, it's a large profile. It's, and so that's where, I think everybody copied. That's obviously Striking copied it. Mm-hmm. That's where I think the 10XD came from is, the SKT Magnum DR. And that's all those baits were basically copied off that. And there's been a lot of tournaments won, a lot of big fish caught on those SKTs.
Which was that hard to get Lucky Craft to do that? Like when you came in, you were like this, except times 10.
No. But you're it's one of those things where it's not like you're not going to sell as many as like a 1.5. So people, they're not going to go pond fish with SKT Magnum. So, but it was one of those things where it's a specialized bait for, and that's like, I know going to Chickamauga next week, I 100% will have, they'll be tied on. So, post spawn fish, and they want a large profile bait. They're gorging, fatten back up. They're going to choke that thing next week.
I know, just to put a wrap on the crankbaits, like I know that we talked about that, but if I associate you with one crankbait, it's that. I don't know if that's just from Illinois where I grew up to where it was like, oh, I'm going to save up my money and get that from Mike's Tackle World. But that little, the SKT Mini DR.
Yep.
That's like, would you say if you were to have like the one, that's the one that you're associate, like the one that kind of you've made your name on that one?
Wow. I think that that one on the California Delta, because that's what I crushed. I was jacking them on the Delta with that bait right there. So I think that one had the most notoriety as far as like fish catches. That's where now we're cooking with gas came, and the phrase line that I said on that one, and so that one that one's iconic from that tournament. But yeah, I think that of all the colors in the SKT series, that one's probably that's it.
Soft bait sideways. I remember it was at a classic when Berkeley launched that Havoc series. And did you know how big the Pit Boss was going to be before it hit the market? But I mean, the Pit Boss was the last time, in my opinion, like I said, this is just me and my sphere of influence. I'm sure there's guys that'll be like, oh, the cream scoundrel. But in my sphere of influence, it was obviously Andre and the Beaver. Like I remember the first couple. And then before that, it would be the Bacon Rind or the Brush Hog, that type of thing. But then after that Pit Boss seemed to, from its release, dominate the market in flipping and even swim jig trailers for a decade.
Yeah.
Did you know that was going to be as big a bait as it was?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's one of those things where I was designing baits, and the Havoc line was actually my brainchild to do that with, and the old CEO of Pure Fishing.
Really?
I was telling him to, hey, we need to create an unscented line. How do we compete with Zooms of the world, and it's all about shapes and colors, not about scent. So that's where that was my concept really. And that was one of my bait designs to come up with. That was the Pit Boss. And at the time I knew Andre's Beaver was still is. I mean, it's a great bait, but it didn't have any action to it. I'm like, well, I want more swimming action. I want vibration. I want kicking in it. So how do we displace as much water as possible in a compact bait? And that's how I came up with that design. I think we were like 4 or 5 renditions into it before I finalized on that one. Did I know it was going to be the number one selling Berkeley bait? No. It turned out it's a great fish catching bait. I mean, they still just choke that thing. And that's probably the most successful bait that I designed in the industry over the years, as far as just the amount of fish catches. I mean, soft plastics always catch more fish than any hard bait. So, but amount of stories that I've heard about from around the country, like I've got my PB on it, and so it's cool to know that you design a bait and that's all. Well, when I design a bait, it's for me. I design it for me first and foremost. How do I catch more fish? What's going to make me better on the water, more efficient? And then it creates, then once it comes to market, then everybody else gets to try it and put it into their arsenals of lure selections. But that's one that I don't think it's going to go anywhere for a while, because I think it's become a staple, like a Brush Hog and a Beaver, or so whatever it might be. That's the Pit Boss. It does catch them.
And then they just transitioned that. When Havoc went away, they just transitioned that bait into one of their renditions. I'll ask this. So I heard, this is an industry gossip. I would just, you don't have to confirm or deny it. But I heard that each guy had like baits in that thing. And Larry Nixon had the worm, which was just like a standard trick worm. I heard he made just buku's of royalty on a trick worm. Like for every Havoc pack that sold, that it was just like normal, just straight trick worm. And Larry Nixon just clean shop on that trick worm that Havoc had.
Well, so whoever designed the bait, whoever designed a bait had a percentage of royalties for their bait from the line. So did Larry made some, because the bottom hopper, I think it was,
that's what it was called. It's called the bottom hopper. Kind of like a little different thing on it.
Yeah, so I got a general idea of probably what he made, but I mean, it's not like he's going to go buy a mansion with it. So
I hear you. How, looking back over the course of your career, how much of a soft spot do you have in your heart for champion boats?
Oh, I think it's like anytime you have your first. So look, everybody remembers their first. So, okay, here we go. So,
Question about boats, Skeet.
yeah. So, yeah. Shit, I'm going downhill real quick.
Champion boats.
Yeah, Champion was, it was my first. Well, I shouldn't say it was my first sponsor, but that was. They were with me through the beginning of the launch of my, of Skeet Reese and the branding, in the tournament world, and so yeah, I'll always be partial to them. I mean, I still have my 2009 Classic winning champion in my shop out here.
Really?
Yeah,
that's very Dean Rojas-esque of you.
Yeah, I don't. Why is what? I don't.
Oh,
know.
He's got like his first, like he rebought his first tournament boat that he won out of.
Oh, I repowered it. I'm actually thinking about selling it now. So.
Oh, you can't sell that, Skeet.
Why?
That's like part of history for you. You'll regret. You'll regret. You just keep it.
Everybody else own history. History only means something to somebody that.
You know what you should do? You should just lease it out to a Skeet Reese fan for a 12-month period, and just let everybody get to fish out of that boat for a year. Run a deal through Reese Fishing or something for it, to where hey, you get to run that champion for a year, and then someone else gets it, and everybody gets it for the next 20 years. Because those champions, like, they never go bad. Like, they get better. They're like a cheese. They get better with age.
Yeah, but I think that I'm still partial because that was the 210 Elite. It was I was in the design process, so there was a Skeet Reese edition. I helped design that boat with Alan Stinson, who was one of the best boat designers in the industry at that time, and so that was that's the only boat that I've helped design. I've designed a lot of things, but to be able to be in the process of helping, like, here's a boat, this is what I want, it was a great performing boat, but obviously the numbers weren't there to strong enough to sustain the brand, and for the owners that bought it, and then but I'm with Ranger, and I'm totally happy with being in the Ranger family. I feel like I'm part of a legendary team there, and that's cool. That's where, it's like I'm in a Forrest Wood product. Like, obviously Forrest Wood's not part of it anymore. He's not here anymore, but it's like, dude, like the Godfather, that's he created this brand, and like that's cool to me.
I'm going to pull this picture up. You were one of the first to also do this, and I'm wondering how. So you were with Berkeley, and then all of a sudden there was the Revo SKT edition. Yep. Jeffrey still has 6 of those, brand new in box. Never really out. I mean, mint condition.
Shit, he might be able to get that's.
Also, see, you haven't changed your ringtone since
ringtone
Angler of the Year. Did they come to you, Berkeley, and say, hey, because I mean, you look what you've done with that, first through Wright McGill, now through Reese Fishing with the yellow, you obviously had the colors, but like that reel to me is also iconic. Is that something that Pure Fishing came and said, hey, we want to take advantage of this? Or was it you going, hey, Kevin's stuff all matches, I want my shit to match too?
I think that was before Kevin's stuff, really.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, yeah, it was. I think it was. You had that, and then Kevin came out with the red, and the red. I've got the first edition of. I'll show you this. Look at this. This is cool. I'll be able to tell the year too. It might have the year on it, because this is one of the first 5 prototypes of the Tour KVD Quantum. Dude, it is heavy. It is like, look at how heavy that is right there.
Now, like, we fish with this piece of shit.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, I think that Revo was before. Anyway, how did that come about? Because that kind of started a whole generation of angler specific matching, that whole thing.
Yeah, it's when so obviously I was part of the Pure Fishing lineup at the time, and I wanted to, how do I incorporate my branding into
a reel. And I said, yeah, I want a black and yellow reel. And that Revo, and I had specifics. So obviously that was a 110 millimeter handle with oversized paddles on it. And that's what really made a big difference to me on reels. And that was, that's still that. I think that reel right there is probably one of the more popular Revos they ever had. Like people that fished that reel, like this is the best Revo I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
They loved that thing.
They were a little heavy, but they do not break. Like I still have a blue winch that casts and reels just like it did when I took it out of the package in 2013.
Yeah. So they, obviously they're not that way now, but
we'll get there. We'll get to Reese fishing shortly here. That's what we're going to conclude with.
Obviously that was me still that was trying to build on the brand, the black and yellow Skeet Reese team Skeet. And, how do we get it out there? And that was a big step because that was my first like mass produced durable, like from a reel. And, to get, do a lure is one thing, but to get a signature black and yellow reel, that was new territory. It wasn't a 1999 combo that you saw at retail. This was like a legitimate tournament driven quality product. And so, yes, that was as far as I know, that was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And obviously since then, there's been a lot more done in the industry done since then.
Perfect segue then. Reese Fishing, you had just launched it last time we had you on before you were inducted into the Hall of Fame. You penned I believe you penned an article or two about the rod industry and the tackle industry and where it stands as of April 23rd, 2025. Talk about Reese Fishing. I know in your press release for your retirement, you said, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still involved in the industry. Focus a lot of attention on Reese Fishing. What's happened from kind of its launch last year all the way up and through the first quarter of 2025?
It's been fun. It's been challenging. I mean, I'm learning a whole new side of business that I'd never had to deal with before. I mean, it was always easy just to design something and put my name on it, let somebody else make it and sell it and distribute it and all that. So, there's been some learning curves along the way, but, ultimately, I mean, I'm designing the best rods I've ever fished, in my 40 years of fishing, and I've fished some great rods along the way. So this is fun that I actually get to pay attention to just all the little micro details in building a rod. And so now letting people get their hands on it and fish it, and to hear the feedback now, like getting so many people talking about these rods are amazing. I think people have expectation of what they fish in the past, and for them to be able to fish. Have you seen that commercial yet, by the way?
No. Is it badass? Is it this one right here?
Yeah. See if you can play that one.
Here, I'm going to have to do it on a different screen, but I totally can. Hold on a second.
I don't know if that's a full length or not.
It's 30 seconds.
Okay, that's full length.
Okay, I'm going to share screen, entire screen. I'm also going to share system audio. All right.
Okay. You're going to love the way my rod feels in your hand. It's so soft to the touch. Just grab the tip and pull on it. You're going to love my actions. After 37 years of professional fishing, I know what makes a rod more comfortable and effective. Your hands and live well will thank you for choosing the most comfortable rod you'll ever fish.
There you go. That's well done, Skeet.
Pull on it.
I have a feeling you directed and wrote that one. just going out on a limb.
Yes. So I went. There's been a lot of feedback on that one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of positive, but there's been some hate mail with that one. But I want to make something that was entertaining. But back to Reese fishing, and now this is my new challenge. But the cool part is,
like, going back to the beginning of this, talking about the fears of leaving a sport that has built my identity and not knowing what I had in store moving forward. And when I finally made the decision, okay, I'm going to do this, and for me to reach out to all my sponsors and partners and say, hey, this is my plan, they're like, oh my gosh, okay. But I believe everybody at this point in time says they want to continue on with me beyond the tournament scene. So Ranger and Bass Pro Shops and Grundens and Lucky Craft and, Lowrance, Cast King, Sea Guide. So everybody still wants to be on board because my brand is not going away. It's just not going to be tournament fishing anymore. So I think they want to participate in that, which is awesome. And then now that time and energy that was spent in the tournament space, now I can devote that to Reese fishing. And it's going to be, we might be showing up and doing, like, we're going old school. We might be just showing up in a van to tournaments and letting people try the rods, fish the rods, and let them feel them firsthand. So get back to some grassroots marketing that people just don't do anymore. But how do I build better products, and how do I get it in more people's hands, and how do I keep pushing the envelope from product development, design, and I may be, who knows, maybe someday I get into soft plastics and glide bait shit. I don't know. Well, anything's possible.
All right. Well, I know you've got 6 tournaments left, possibly 7 if you make Red Crest for next year.
Well, I got 4 tour events.
4, then maybe heavy hitters next year.
Yeah.
5, and then Red Crest next year.
That'd be, So
that'd be 6.
Yeah.
I want you to look back on this. If people were to remember you, this is on the water. Like, look back for one on the water tournament moment where when you say Skeet Reese, you go, I remember when. What moment do you want that to be?
Wow. Golly, that's I don't know if I could answer that. I think it's more not a particular moment. I think it's more about the energy that I hope I brought to the fans, the excitement. Like, I get freaking jacked up when I catch them. I mean, this is supposed to be fun, right? Like, this is the dude. You catch a big one or you catch a winning fish, or it doesn't matter. I think it's just that energy, and I think that's the general consensus that I've received from fans all across the country. Is just the excitement and the fun and the energy that I brought to tournament fishing, and for the viewership. So I think that's, yeah.
Is there anything in the sport that you haven't accomplished that you wish that you had?
Oh, obviously, I would have loved to have won the the AOI and the Bass Pro Tour and the Red Crest title.
Which Red Crest title still on the table?
Still an option, possibly, yes.
I mean, that'd be a heck of a send off.
But I also know that neither one of those is going to define. It's not going to change me as a person. It's not going to change. I don't think it'll change my legacy in the sport. And what it's that would just might be for my own personal. Hell yeah, I did it, dude.
Mm-hmm. Is there a chance we could see you at like a U.S. Open now, or maybe like slide into Clear Lake Open, or?
I think obviously we're going into uncharted territory. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to have withdrawals from the tournament space, and I still keep in touch with Denny Brower. Mm-hmm. And Denny just said, he goes, like, retiring was like it's the greatest thing he ever did. He loved, like, when he stepped away from tournament fishing, life became just fun, and he still jumps in team tournaments, fishes stuff on Amistad, and so I'll be curious to see where I end up in the next few years. Am I going to want to compete again, and I can jump in I can jump into a one bass tournament at Clear Lake, or I can go fish the U.S. Open, whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to commit to anything for sure. The thought of living a year stress-free of tournament competition, the expectations, anxieties, and all that with what tournament represent sounds really freaking good right now. So just to be able to not focus more, let's say I'm on to the next event right now, map study, and it's just doing everything, trying to figure out where the hell I'm going to catch them, and all the logistics that go with it. So the thought of just being free of that feels so good right now next year. But we'll see.
Are you going to keep the 650? Or is that like, holy cow, we don't have to tow around with that thing anymore?
I will probably get rid of the 650. So if anybody is interested in my street legal monster truck, I probably will sell that.
Are you glad you did that, or did you feel kind of stuck in that thing then after everyone just expected you to be in it?
Oh no,
I can't imagine that's a handy vehicle to go get a double quarter pounder with cheese at McDonald's in after a long day on the water.
Yeah, you don't go through drive-thrus with that. So that's number one. It is kind of convenient because it holds 220 gallons of fuel.
Fair.
So if you don't like stopping for fuel, and that was one of my excuses of buying that, is I hated stopping for fuel. I don't want to, most trucks got a 25, 30 gallon tank. So you got to stop every 300 miles and get fuel. I can stop every 12 to 1500 miles. So from a marketing standpoint, that truck has paid for itself.
That costs you $750 to fill that thing up. And that's cheap. That's $3.50 a gallon.
Yeah, it's cheap. Yeah, it's almost $6 here where I live. So
oh my gosh, $750. But yeah, you don't have to stop very often.
Right. So, but from a marketing standpoint, brand standpoint, that was the best. There's more pictures taken of that truck around the country than the entire rest of the world of professional bass fishing combined. There's no, doesn't matter where you go, people are taking pictures of that rig. Mm-hmm. So it paid for itself. It's been fun, but do I need it anymore? No. I'm gonna let it loose.
Anything else you want to get in here before I let you go?
I don't know.
I know we could have gone like MLF with the wins and all that. We could have gone like a lot earlier with your first wins and kind of getting, but I'll stick with what I know, which is kind of like the meat of that career there. You could do. Have you ever considered a book? Have you ever considered like the Skeet Reese story now that you're just going to be sitting at home?
No, because I don't want to see those stories. Holy shit.
I mean, Ike has one. Kevin has a couple books out.
Yeah, but Kevin will never write what he did off the water. So that's like, well, do I want a biography? Then, yeah, it'd be a very interesting.
Have you ever been approached for any of that? Like the Skeet Reese story, documentary, biography, anything of how, like, I
don't think my career,
how he turned it into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame.
I don't think my life is that intriguing to that many people. I mean, I don't think we're going to go sell.
Some would disagree.
But at this point in time, no thought of it. So, no, I think it's just we're going to focus on finishing the season out here, and then we get to keep working on reefsfishing.com and grow that, and just that's my next my next challenge is to get as many rods out there in people's hands as I can.
I like it. I greatly appreciate it. Like I said, I know you're busy. I know it's early in the morning. I greatly appreciate an hour and 10 minutes of your time, Skeet.
We got an hour and 10 in? That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. No, it's pretty strong.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully people still will watch after 30 minutes.
They all, I'll, as soon as you get off and then I run the commercials and come back with like a editorial piece, that's when viewership starts dropping. Especially if I say the word crappie. Have you gotten into the Clear Lake crappie yet? I'll watch it right now. I can watch it start dropping. Have you gotten into the Clear Lake crappie yet, Skeet?
Smash the giants on Clear Lake. So, yeah, like the average size that catch is like 2.5 pounds.
Yeah. So, October 1st, I'm starting a show called CTL, which is Crappie Talk Live. This is not a joke. You talk about doing things that you enjoy in the industry to keep from getting burned out, where you're at peace, or you love doing things. Crappie fishing is that for me. And don't deer hunt. I watch I watched my buddy shoot a deer one time, and I'm like, cool, that's cool. I got nothing against it, but I just don't hunt. I'm obsessed with the crappie game, and I've gotten into it and the more and more, and then I'll post the big crappie, and then guys will message me, and I was like, I think there is a need for bass anglers who want to do something during the off season.
Yes. It's so funny how many of these guys on tour that, I mean, they love crappie fishing.
That's what the show is. It is not professional crappie fishing. It is not the professional crappie fishing tour. It is a off-season crappie fishing show targeted for bass anglers by bass anglers to become a better crappie fisherman from October through March.
I like it.
I'm not kidding.
I'm going to be one of those.
I am beyond pumped. Now, I've talked to Brian Smith. I've talked to I've talked to Ken Ma-ish, obviously, a number of different guys. I had the dude who just won the Clear Lake Open, guide out there, super mellow dude.
Oh,
Smith? No.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me.
I just had him on the show for an hour, so.
Yeah, it just total. Oh my gosh, you're killing me.
Hold on a second. I'm fast on the computer here.
As soon as you say it, I'm like,
of course they got rid of that article. John Pearl. God. I know. I'm the same way. He was a great guest.
I totally brain farted. I'm like,
he is as Cali as they get. He was like, I never talked to him before the interview, and he was just like, yeah, bro, I'm good. Just super mellow guide. And I was looking at the guide, and he mentioned the crappie out there about how in that tournament he was catching like 3.5 pound crappie out of Clear Lake.
Yeah.
When CTL starts, this is an interactive show. There's going to be eight on location learn how to entertainment shows. Jeremy Lawyer on Lake of the Ozarks, like, that looks like a limit in the first 30 minutes. Let's go fry them up in some Crisco, all the way to, Clear Lake is now officially on that list. So I will be out in California this fall. After I get married, I got engaged over the weekend in California.
What?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh shit! So, congratulations.
Yeah. She's from Orange County, so I did the whole Laguna Beach.
That's why you were down in OC.
Yeah, no, I got her out on Laguna Beach and the tide pools, and then like when I was like, oh, let's go look for some starfish or maybe some little crabs and stuff, and then she like turned around and I put the ring in a tide pool, and then I was like, let's see what we can find out of this one, and then she's like, oh, what is this? And like held it up and freaked out. I was proud of myself, Skeet.
Congratulations.
Made it 40 years. But
somebody actually committed to you.
I know, it's shocking. But I couldn't be happier. And and she trust me, if you want BTL, if you're a listener of BTL and you want it to be better, she will make BTL better. She's super pumped about getting on board and doing it as a team. You know how it is all about like,
but if you want, team and working with someone on Clear Lake. So
yes, that was where I was going with this for crappie, because it is, from what I'm understanding, the number, like it is an explosion of gigantors right now on Clear Lake.
It's pretty stupid. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, I see what people post, around the country, and I think me and Scroggins got a little thing going on. He's like, oh, I got a 3-pounder. I'm like, because I posted like an average one, like it weighed 2.74 pounds on my scale. And he's like, oh, and then he caught a 3-pounder. But I'm like, we catch a lot of 3-pounders out there.
Yeah. See, I just caught my first 3-pounder out of Oklahoma. I've caught a lot of heavy 2s, but a true 3-pounder. Now I'm not counting like a 297. Like it had to be 3 on the scales. And I caught my first one. There it is right there.
That's a tank. That's a slab. Yeah,
yeah. But I would love to. I'd love to get a little.
But I was out there, because I mean, last week I was up there. When I was up there last week, and I'm forward facing around and jig head minnow and a 5-inch bait, and you see some fish, and you're like, oh shit, there's a bass, and there's 2 or 3 of them down there, and you catch it, and it's here's a 2 3/4 pound crappie. And like, so that's they're that big. They look like you're thinking they're bass down there because they're that caliber.
Yeah.
Guys are catching 3.5 pounders.
Dude, they're different animals, aren't they? They look to me like a triple tail almost when they get that big. Yeah. Like they're just the way they're built and how thick they are and the dimensions, and then the way that they act like reminds me of like a muskie eye. When you get a muskie up, like they're like kind of aware of the big ones are. Like they have little personalities to them. You can watch them like hunt and stuff. They're a totally different beast. They're not like the 11.5 inches where you leave the live well, which is just as fun, but just a totally different ball game where you leave the live well open and just, play cornhole with them.
Well, you can do that at Clear Lake. I mean, but on a good day, I'll catch 100 a day up there, and they're average, like I said.
Yeah, we're doing a CPO. If you're down for that.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
So, all right, Skeet, I appreciate it. Have a good morning.
Singer, enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me on, and hopefully, you still use me post retirement.
I'm sure I will. If you ever want to get on, just feel free to give me a shout. Like no one calls me like anymore. They're like, "Oh, you haven't had me on BTL." I was like, "Well, I didn't know you wanted to be on BTL."
Okay. Well,
anything that comes down the pipeline, give me a shout. All right, see you, Skeet.
Okay. See you, bud.
All right, the one and only Skeet Reese. Like I said, I skipped the advertising for that. So we're gonna take our first break and our last break, and then kind of rewind a little bit about what went on during the week, what's going on the next week. Got a bunch of on location shows going up. I'm headed to South Carolina, and I went California to Texas, got back at 8 a.m. this morning, headed to South Carolina on Friday for an OBT media event, but that means live BTL shows, and then straight from there to the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic in Wabasha, Minnesota, which a tip of the cap. I cannot thank the BTL listeners enough. Over $5,900 donated to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital strictly through the 2025 Bass Fishing Saves Lives t-shirts that I've been talking about for the last month on BTL. Blows me away. The support of the BTL listeners. Cannot thank you enough for that. And also a massive shout out to ATS Printing for bare bones minimum costs on the t-shirt and all that, so we can maximize the profits that go directly to St. Jude. It is the biggest donation that the BTL listeners have made through the t-shirts in the 4 years that we've done the t-shirt sales. And I could not be more grateful. Blown away when the final numbers came in. I kind of checked midway through, and I was like, holy cow, like we're on pace to sell the most t-shirts and raise the most money for St. Jude through that BTL and St. Jude t-shirt. And then when those numbers came in, because they turned it around so that can be donated, so it can be part of the 2025 Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic. I was like, wait, that's like raw. No, they're like, no, that's for the t-shirt sales. So greatly appreciate it. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, wrap up an interesting week in professional bass fishing. It's BTL on a Wednesday. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
This is Gamakatsu's new Nano Alpha line of hooks. If it looks familiar, that's because they are. It's the same shapes and sizes in the round bend and the EWG and in the new Horizon head that you know and love from Gamakatsu, but there are a couple new features with this Nano Alpha, which is this little green label that you see on the packaging. First off, 2 times faster hook penetration. That's because of the Nano Alpha smooth coating on it, and also it is 4 times more corrosion resistant. Check it out, Nano Alpha.
I've been using Sunline Shooter for the majority of my career. Millions of dollars made, lots of bass caught, and the gnarly stuff. If you need a abrasion resistant, tough fishing line for the really mean stuff, Sunline Shooter is for you.
Beatdown is efficient.
Rock solid.
100% American made.
This thing is super tough. I mean, this thing is not going anywhere.
I've ran the Beatdown double stack from Florida all the way up to New York. And the one thing that I know is when I get to my fishing destination, I never have to worry about issues with my graph mount.
Your options are endless with these mounts, but they're steady, they're solid. These are the most reliable mounts on the market, and you can't go wrong with the Beatdown.
When you're ready to hit the water, Denali Fishing has you covered. Regardless of your skill level, from beginner all the way up to tournament pro, Denali has rods, reels, and tungsten to get the job done. Check them out at denalifishing.com.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top unarmed, Strike King.
Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFTCO. Any fish, any water.
All right, wrapping things up here on a Wednesday. Kind of a jacked up week. No shows Monday or Tuesday because us getting engaged over Easter weekend in California to my beautiful fiance, which it's an odd word to say. But I like it. Big shout out to Skeet Reese. Like I said, a little bit of I wasn't expecting it to come at this time for the retirement, but that's three, I fairly say, icons in the sport over the last 3 years. If you take Skeet and Kevin and Rick Clunn, have had a big part in shaping the landscape of professional bass fishing. So if you want to, for some reason, missed BTL over the last couple of days because there wasn't, I had a guest on a couple months ago, Joe Cermelli. He used to do hook shots. He was fishing editor for Field and Stream. Then he did a podcast for Meat Eater. Now he does an independent podcast called Cut and Retie. It is available on MP3 on podcast platforms. We talk a lot about non-fishing things, but I jumped on for an hour and a half with him. He covers he covers everything fishing. So like bass fishing is just a very small section of what he covers. And then tournament bass fishing is even smaller. So I had a really good time jumping on his show. And then I also was a guest on Officially Unofficial with Dave Mercer, which is available over on the bassmaster.com podcast platform. I was supposed to co-MC the Bass Cat Owners Tournament this weekend with the one and only Kevin Rogers, who is successfully, I'm Benjamin Buttoning this transition. He went from dominating the crappie tournament scene to now competes on the MPFL, fishes opens, all sorts of stuff too. But he went from crappie to bass. I'm staying in the bass world, but expanding out into the crappie world as well. But I was supposed to MC that event with him that was on Grand Lake Friday and Saturday. A lot of rain, a lot of conditions, City of Grove, the whole nine worked. Anyway, that got postponed. So tomorrow is a Q&A with Frank Scalish. If you have any questions for Frank, leave them, shoot a DM to Frank_Scalish, I think, at Instagram. You can look up Frank Scalish fishing _ something like that. If you have a question, or Matt Pangrak on Instagram, or you can email me, matt@basson.com. If you have a question and a Q&A for Frank, we're calling it kind of show like 199.5. I'm also going to open up the video and audio lines tomorrow. So if you, at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, if you want to jump on and ask Frank a question in person with video, as long as you have a good signal, you're more than welcome to do that. So we'll do that show. I'm also going to try to squeeze in a couple extra bonus shows. Kyle Welcher, obviously on the list to get on, but like the dude is on back-to-back weeks. Thought he was going to win the MPFL. I'd like to get Hackney on too. He had a big NPFL win over the week. To talk to him, to Greg Hackney about that, but he's competing this week. So we're kind of in that part of the year where we're trying to fit the puzzle pieces together as to who's available, who's has the cell service, who's practicing, who's tournament fishing. So just stay with it. Thank you for all those who've reached out. Like I said, I don't do Facebook. I posted on Instagram about getting engaged, overwhelmed with the amount of support of BTL listeners, advice, congratulations, things like that. It's awesome. It's like a whole new friend group. And I got to meet a bunch of you guys at the Classic this year. So that was awesome. But big shout out to Skeet Reese for taking time. Always been really good about taking time doing it. Raw, unfiltered. One of the best to ever do it. And like I said, he's not going to go anywhere. Like, Kevin's still around. Rick's still around and stuff. But from that standpoint, kind of a little bit of a farewell or goodbye tour. He's got 4 regular season events left after this. But big shout out to Skeet for jumping on BTL. Same time, same place tomorrow. If you guys haven't subscribed to the BTL YouTube channel, helps out a lot. Number of subscribers. That way, when I go live at random times, like I did an hour later today, you guys are able to get that notification on your phone if you click the bell. Also, if you're an MP3 or podcast, iTunes, Spotify listener, leave a review, leave a 5-star review. That helps as we roll into next year to make BTL bigger and better with the biggest names in the sport of professional bass fishing. That's all we got for today. We'll talk to everyone tomorrow. See ya.